Find a bank that actually trusts you. That is what Christopher E. Zepeda said, out loud, across a desk, in a marble lobby, on a Wednesday morning in October. He said it from behind a glass-walled office, hands folded. His voice was steady, the tone of a man who believed he was delivering guidance to someone beneath him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He said it the way you say something you've said 1,000 times, without thinking. The man sitting across from him was Hilton Burke. Hilton had arrived at 10:43, dark charcoal jacket, white shirt, no tie. He carried a slim leather folio with the ease of someone who had been in 1,000 rooms and never once needed the room to know it. Zepeda had looked at Hilton for exactly 40 seconds. He looked at the jacket, the folio, the phone, and then he made a determination. The kind of judgment that happens before the brain even has time to think. No handshake, no introduction.
I want to be upfront with you. We have thresholds here. Credit minimums, a specific for the clients we're structured to serve. Not every situation aligns with that profile. Some institutions are better equipped for different circumstances.
What circumstances are you referring to specifically?
Zepeda blinked. He hadn't expected a challenge. He recovered. He always recovered.
Asset base, history, relationships. My honest advice, find a bank that actually trusts you. That is what will serve you best.
He sat back. He waited for Hilton Burke to thank him and leave. Hilton looked at him for 3 full seconds. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He looked at Zepeda the way you look at something you've finally understood and are no longer surprised by. Then Hilton said one sentence, just one. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out into the October morning. Zepeda checked his calendar. He had a meeting at 11. He wouldn't think about that sentence again until the call came. By then, there was nothing left to do.
This is not a story about a rude bank manager. A rude bank manager is an inconvenience. You write a complaint letter, you leave a review, you find another bank. The world doesn't stop for a rude bank manager, and no one loses sleep over the ones that go unaccountable. Because most of them do go unaccountable. That's the part of the story everybody already knows. This is a story about something else. This is a story about what Christopher E. Zepeda did not know when he said those 5 words across his desk at 10:53 on a Wednesday morning.
It's about how much that ignorance was going to cost. Not just him, but the institution he believed would protect him. The regional director who made complaints disappear, and a banking branch whose lending numbers, when someone finally made them sit still, told a story that no clean incident report could undo. Hilton Burke had been watching the Meridian Avenue branch of Pinnacle Trust Bank for 14 months. Not the way a customer watches a bank, the way a shareholder watches an asset that is underperforming. His firm, Burke Capital Partners, had been accumulating shares for 3 years, disclosed, legal, complete, available to anyone who knew where to look. By the morning of his visit, Hilton Burke held 34.2% of Pinnacle Trust Bank's outstanding common shares. 34.2%. That is not a passive position. That is not a small investor keeping a seat at the table. At 34.2%, Hilton Burke was the single largest individual shareholder in the institution. The marble lobby, the glass-walled offices, the fountain at the entrance, all of it existed within the orbit of his ownership. Christopher Zepeda knew none of this. He knew what he could see in 40 seconds. A charcoal jacket, an open collar, a phone. He knew the categories he used to sort people before they even finished speaking. He was certain of his judgment. That certainty would not survive the week. This is also a story about Brenda R. Thomas, 11 years at the branch. At 10:51 that morning, she opened a notes app on her personal phone. She had 47 entries in that file. 3 years of Zepeda's behavior. She never had a place to send it that she trusted. She found one that same afternoon. This is a story about Florence J. Fanning, chairwoman of the board. She received a call from compliance at 4:17 p.m. She sat in silence for 6 full seconds. Then she went to work. This is a story about Nathaniel N. Williams, Hilton's attorney. By 11:22 Wednesday, he was drafting the filings that would dismantle a career. This is a story about consequences. Not vague gestures, specific, documented, quantified, dollar amounts, termination dates, federal filings, consent decrees. Vague consequences are what institutions count on to protect men like Zepeda. Specific consequences are what they get when the man they kicked out the door happens to be the man the institution answers to. Christopher Zepeda told Hilton Burke to find a bank that actually trusts him. He said it in a building that belonged to Hilton Burke, in the most literal sense ownership allows. What follows is everything that came next, chapter by chapter, number by number, without softening a single detail. Because the details are the point. Stay with me. If you have ever been dismissed by someone who had absolutely no idea who they were talking to, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now, and let's get into it. The city looked different from the 18th floor of the Whitmore building at 7 in the morning. At noon, it was a chaotic hum of keyboards and stale coffee. But at 7, it was a sanctuary of early light and pale gray skies. These 20 minutes belonged to Hilton Burke and to nothing else. For 9 years, Hilton had sat in this office. He watched the skyline change while he focused on a single principle: precise, deeply researched investment. He had been told his strategy was wrong. Then he was right. He was told he was lucky. Then he was right again. Eventually, the critics stopped talking. Hilton was 51. He had started with $40,000 and a conviction that regional banks were systematically undervalued. That conviction had turned into a fortune. He no longer did interviews. He preferred to let the numbers do the talking. At 7:45, the silence broke. Daniel Osei, head of the bank equity desk, called with the clinical precision Hilton valued most. "Meridian Q3 numbers came through," Daniel said. "Approval rates dropped another 4 points. They are sitting 23% below the district average. That gap does not close randomly." Hilton set his coffee down. "Same manager?" "Christopher Zepeda, 9 years at that branch." "I want to go look at it," Hilton said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded decided. By 8:20, the visit was set. No announcement, no warning. Hilton packed a folio with 3 specific pages: a summary of the branch's failure, an SEC filing of his ownership, and a map of the neighborhood's lending footprint. He had grown up blocks away from that branch. He knew, because he had checked, that the mortgage approval rate in that specific neighborhood was the lowest in the district. The drive was 11 minutes. He spent them in deliberate thought. He was walking in as a shareholder exercising oversight. He was also walking in as a black man in a branch that denied black applicants at a rate no other office could match. He understood that these 2 truths would not be received equally. At 10:39, he pulled into the lot. He sat in the car for 90 seconds, centering himself. He wasn't hesitant. He was becoming the version of himself the room required. He got out, buttoned his charcoal jacket, and walked through the glass doors. The teller, Teresa, looked up from the counter and gave him a real smile. She had no idea that the man standing before her was about to change everything.
Christopher Zepeda had a choreography for every morning. He arrived at 8:50, 10 minutes early, not because policy required it, but because it created a distinction between his commitment and the people who worked for him. He would stand in the center of the lobby, surveying the floor. To an outsider, he was a manager. To the staff, he was a man who had decided the space belonged to him, confirming that nothing had moved without his permission. Brenda Thomas had watched this routine for 11 years. She had been at the branch since before Zepeda arrived. She had watched him replace the previous manager's family photos with cold, framed prints of the skyline. Brenda knew about the complaints filed against him, the school teacher, the contractor, and she knew how the regional director, Mark Covington, made those complaints disappear. Covington called it consistent with protocol. Brenda called it something else, but she wasn't saying it yet. At 10:43, the glass doors opened. Teresa Gonzalez was at the front counter. She met Hilton Burke with a genuine smile, the kind that training manuals can't teach. "Good morning," Hilton said, placing his folio on the counter. "I'd like to speak with someone in management. I have a matter concerning the branch." Teresa didn't hesitate. She dialed Zepeda's office. "Christopher, I have a gentleman here for you." As Teresa walked Hilton across the lobby, Brenda Thomas looked up from her desk. She noted the folio, the charcoal jacket. But mostly she noted how Hilton moved, without hurry, without apology. He moved with the self-possession of someone who knew exactly who he was. Brenda turned back to her work, but she kept the lobby in her peripheral vision. She felt the shift in the room. Zepeda was at his desk when they knocked. He didn't look up immediately. When he finally did, the 40 seconds began. He looked at the jacket, the folio, the phone in Hilton's pocket. He didn't see a majority shareholder. He didn't see a man who could end his career with a single phone call. He saw a category. Zepeda did not stand. He did not offer a hand. He did not even ask for a name. "Come in," Zepeda said, his voice dripping with practiced indifference. "Sit down." He was already done deciding about Hilton Burke before the chair even clicked into place. Hilton sat. He placed the folio on his knee and his phone on top. He looked at Christopher Zepeda with the calm attentiveness of a man who had come to listen before he spoke. This was a discipline Hilton had practiced for 22 years, receiving information before forming conclusions. Zepeda told him quite a lot in the first 90 seconds, and none of it was intentional. "I want to be up front with you," Zepeda began. He didn't ask how he could help. He moved straight to the rejection phase of his script. "We have criteria, credit thresholds, account minimums, a specific lending profile that reflects the clients we're structured to serve." He folded his hands. "Some banks are better positioned for different circumstances." Hilton's voice was flat. "What circumstances are you referring to, specifically?" The question landed like a stone in a quiet pond. Zepeda blinked. He was used to people nodding and walking away in shame, not turning the question back on him. "General financial profile," Zepeda recovered. "Asset base, history. Based on what you've shared with me, I haven't shared anything," Hilton said. The room went quiet. Not aggressive, just factually silent. Across the lobby, Brenda Thomas opened the Notes app on her phone. She didn't need to hear the words through the glass. She knew the shape of this conversation. She began documenting. Zepeda leaned forward, finishing the transaction. "My honest advice? Find a bank that actually trusts you, one better suited to where you are."
He sat back, waiting for Hilton to leave. Hilton looked at him for 3 seconds. He didn't blink. He looked at Zepeda the way you look at a problem you've already solved. "Before I go," Hilton said, "can I ask what this branch's loan approval rate is, compared to the district average?" Zepeda stiffened. "That's proprietary information. We don't share internal metrics with walk-ins." "I understand," Hilton replied. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. He picked up his folio and his phone. He looked at Zepeda one last time and said one single sentence. It was quiet. It was flat. It was a document Zepeda wasn't yet authorized to open. Then Hilton turned and walked out. He passed Teresa, returning her smile, and stepped into the October air. He didn't wait until he got home. He didn't wait until he was less angry. He got into his car and called Nathaniel Williams, his attorney. "I need you to document everything," Hilton said. "Branch visit, Pinnacle Trust, Meridian Avenue." "What happened?" Nathaniel asked. "I'll give you the full account when I'm back," Hilton said. "But start the clock. Now." In the lobby behind him, Christopher Zepeda was already reaching for his phone. He thought the meeting was over. He had no idea. The clock had just started ticking on his career. Zepeda called his regional director, Mark Covington, at 11:09. He closed his office door and stood with his back to the lobby, lowering his voice so the tellers couldn't hear. "I had a situation this morning," he said. Covington didn't sound surprised. He had spent 12 years making problems like this disappear. Zepeda gave him the revised version of the story. In this version, Zepeda was the professional, and Hilton Burke was an agitated walk-in, attempting to extract proprietary data. Zepeda carefully omitted his own insults. He left out the part where he told a stranger to find a bank that actually trusts you. Instead, he painted a picture of a security threat requiring containment. Covington's response was clinical. "File it. Incident report and ASAR. Unknown individual attempted to extract data, behavioral flags. Keep the language clean." By noon, Zepeda believed the matter was closed. He filed a suspicious activity report, an SAR, flagging the unknown subject. He even told the security supervisor to flag the man if he ever returned. Zepeda trusted the walls of the institution. For 9 years, those walls had protected him. 3 prior complaints, 3 clean closures. He believed he was untouchable. But Zepeda had made a fatal error. He hadn't asked for a name. But the bank's automated systems didn't need him to. The moment the SAR was filed, it triggered a mandatory cross-reference in Pinnacle Trust's compliance engine. This was not a human process. It was code. The engine checked the report against every internal registry, employees, board members, and, crucially, the disclosed shareholder registry. The system saw the timestamp. It saw the branch location. And it found a courtesy flag placed 8 months earlier by Burke Capital's legal team. It was a standard notification stating that Hilton Burke might conduct periodic site visits to his assets. The engine matched the flag to the report. The report matched the name. The name matched the registry. At 2:31 that afternoon, a file appeared in the queue of Sandra Legrand, a senior compliance officer. At the top was the name, Hilton N. Burke. Below the name was a number, 34.2% of outstanding common shares, the single largest individual shareholder of record. Sandra Legrand read the report once. Then she read it again. She looked at the incident report Zepeda had filed, calling the owner of the bank an unknown individual with behavioral flags. She sat very still for a long moment. She realized she wasn't looking at a routine filing. She was looking at the end of a career. She picked up her phone. The clock wasn't just ticking anymore. It was striking midnight. The lobby camera at the Meridian Avenue branch was a state-of-the-art 4K eye. It sat in the northeast corner, recording in a continuous loop. It had been running since the moment the doors unlocked, capturing everything, including the 12 minutes that would end Christopher Zepeda's career. It didn't record the audio, but it captured the truth. The precise moment Zepeda leaned forward with a condescending smirk. The stillness of Hilton Burke. The lack of any agitated gestures that Zepeda had claimed in his false report. Zepeda believed his lies were safe in the system, but Nathaniel Williams, Hilton's attorney, knew better. By 2:17 that afternoon, a formal legal preservation notice hit Pinnacle Trust's registered agent. The order was absolute. Freeze everything. The footage, the logs, the keystrokes. The bank's legal team forwarded the notice to Sandra Legrand in compliance at 2:43. But Sandra didn't need the footage to know something was wrong. She was already staring at the shareholder registry. However, the real danger to Zepeda didn't come from a 4K camera or a high-priced lawyer. It came from 40 feet away. Brenda Thomas had worked at this branch for 11 years. She had watched Zepeda for 3 years with the patient, quiet focus of a hunter. At 10:51 that morning, she had opened a notes app on her personal phone. 10:51. Customer in gray jacket, seated. 10:54. Manager posture, aggressive lean. 10:57. Customer stationary, no raised gestures. Brenda had 48 entries in that file. She had started it after watching the regional director, Mark Covington, bury 3 previous complaints. She realized then that the truth would never survive inside the building. It had to be built outside. At 3 o'clock, Brenda looked at Zepeda through his glass walls. He was already meeting with another victim, completely unaware that his fixing days were over. Brenda didn't knock. She didn't warn him. Instead, she used a private email address she had kept for 2 years and sent a message to Hilton's legal team. I have been documenting Christopher Zepeda for 3 years. I have 48 recorded observations. I believe they are relevant to what happened this morning. The reply came in 25 minutes. Ms. Thomas, we would very much like to speak with you. Tomorrow at 9? Brenda typed one word. Yes. She finished her shift. She walked past Zepeda's office without a word. She didn't sleep much that night. She wasn't tired. She was ready. She had been waiting 3 years for 9 o'clock to arrive. The compliance system was not designed for drama. It was a cold, automated function, a regulatory gatekeeper designed to prevent the bank from filing reports against its own owners. It didn't need a human to start it. It just ran. At 2:31 p.m., it returned a result that made Sandra Legrand, a 26-year veteran of banking compliance, stop breathing for a moment. She stared at the screen. One name, one number. Hilton N. Burke. 34.2% of common shares. Sandra immediately called Florence Fanning, the chairwoman of the board. After 6 seconds of stunned silence, Florence gave a 2-word order. Call him. When Hilton answered the phone at Burke Capital, his voice was identical to the one he used in the branch. Level, unhurried, and completely in control. Mr. Burke, Sandra began, her voice tight. I'm calling regarding an incident report filed at our Meridian branch this morning. Did you have an interaction with the manager, Christopher Zepeda? Yes, Hilton said. Sandra took one careful breath. The system has flagged your name against the shareholder registry in connection with a suspicious activity report. Can you confirm your status as a major shareholder? Hilton didn't sound surprised. He sounded clinical. My name is Hilton Burke. I hold 34.2% of this bank. I visited the branch for routine oversight. The manager informed me that Pinnacle Trust was not the right fit for my circumstances. He advised me to find a bank that actually trusts me. He paused, letting the irony sink in. I went there to understand why his loan approval rate for black applicants is 23% below average. I think the visit clarified that question considerably. Sandra Legrand didn't speak for 4 seconds. In the world of high-level compliance, 4 seconds of silence is an eternity. It is the sound of an entire institution realizing it is standing on a landmine. "Mr. Burke," she said finally, "I am deeply sorry. I will call you back within the hour." Hilton hung up and looked out his office window. The city looked the same as it had at 7 that morning, but everything else had changed. He called his attorney. "It's moving," Hilton said. "How fast?" Nathaniel asked. "Fast." Meanwhile, back at the Meridian branch, Christopher Zepeda was finishing his day. He was thinking about the commute home. He was thinking about a staffing matter. He was not thinking about Hilton Burke. He believed the paperwork was filed. He believed the matter was resolved. He believed the walls of the bank were still protecting him. He had no idea that 47 floors above him, his name had just entered a file from which there was no escape. He would find out at 8:50 the next morning, when he arrived to find his conference room already occupied by the people who owned his career. Florence Fanning, the chairwoman, arrived at 8:12 the next morning. She didn't call ahead. She didn't ask for permission. She walked into the Meridian branch with the kind of forward momentum that doesn't need an introduction. She bypassed the lobby and went straight to the conference room. By 8:20, the regional director, Mark Covington, was summoned. He entered with his hand extended, his fixer smile firmly in place. Florence did not shake his hand. Instead, she placed a single document on the table. At the top was the SAR report Zepeda had filed. Below it was the shareholder registry. Covington looked at it. His professional posture didn't just break, it evaporated. It took 3 seconds for the reality to hit him. He was looking at evidence of a career-ending mistake. "Where is Mr. Zepeda?" Florence asked. Zepeda arrived at 8:51. He walked in through the side door, smug and routine, until he saw the faces through the conference room glass. He saw the chairwoman, he saw his boss, and he saw the document. He walked in. Florence pushed the paper toward him. She watched his eyes find the name. Hilton Burke. Then the number. 34.2%. "I didn't know who he was," Zepeda stammered. "I know," Florence replied. Her voice was ice. "If I'd known—" "Stop," Florence interrupted. "That is not the answer I want. If your behavior only changes when you recognize someone is powerful, then your conduct wasn't about policy. It was about power. And that makes this significantly worse." By 10 a.m., the world was collapsing on Pinnacle Trust. Hilton's attorney had already filed formal complaints with federal regulators. Each filing used Zepeda's own incident report as the primary evidence of discrimination. By 1 p.m., the press was calling. By 2:30 p.m., an emergency board meeting was called to fire the management team. But the final blow didn't come from the board. It came from Brenda Thomas. At 4:45, she sat in a law office 12 minutes away. She opened her phone and began reading her 48 entries, 3 years of documented arrogance, into a voice recorder. Zepeda thought he had managed a difficult morning. He thought his paperwork had protected him. In reality, every lie he told, every report he filed, and every call he made to Covington had simply built the gallows he was now standing on. His own escalation, his own paper trail, his own instrument of destruction. The termination letter arrived on a Friday, 13 days after Hilton Burke had walked into the branch. A representative from HR delivered it in person at 9 a.m. The letter was brutal. It cited 3 grounds: violation of fair treatment policies, conduct unbecoming of a manager, and, most importantly, filing a false SAR. The letter used 3 words that end a banking career forever. Terminated for cause. There was no severance, no thank you for your service. Zepeda was given 30 minutes to clear his desk under security escort. At 9:38, he walked out of the side entrance for the last time. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't look at Brenda. He simply vanished from the industry. Mark Covington, the fixer, lasted 18 days longer, but the investigation into his 12-year history was undeniable. They found that Covington hadn't just ignored complaints, he had actively suppressed evidence. His termination cited a failure of supervisory duty. He didn't even bother to appeal. 6 weeks later, the results of the fair lending audit were released. It was a 4-page indictment of the Meridian branch. The numbers were staggering. The denial rate for black applicants was 64%. For white applicants with the exact same financial profile, 26%. The audit identified 41 people who had been wrongfully denied. Some had lost their homes. Others had lost their businesses. The window had closed for them. But the vault was about to open. The federal investigation concluded with a massive consent order. Pinnacle Trust was forced to pay a $3.4 million settlement. The smallest check sent out was $31,000. The largest was $247,000, sent to a man who had been denied a refinance twice by Zepeda. The bank was also placed under a 4-year civilian oversight committee. They were no longer allowed to police themselves. Nathaniel Williams called Hilton when the order was finalized. "It's done," he said. "What's the timeline on that oversight committee?" Hilton asked. Nathaniel laughed. 90 days, and they're still looking for members." "I have some thoughts on that," Hilton replied. He hung up and looked at his screen. The Meridian branch was under new management now. The approval numbers were already shifting. The gap was closing. The numbers had always been the point. They were the evidence. They were the weapon. And now, they were the cure. The story of Christopher Zepeda was over, but the record of what he had done and what it cost him would stay in the system forever. One year later, on a Wednesday morning in October, Hilton Burke made his coffee. The light hitting the 18th floor was the same pale, direct gray it had been a year ago. It was one of the few things in this city Hilton still trusted, the consistency of the seasons. The silence was broken at 7:52 by a call from Daniel. "Meridian Q, 3 numbers," Daniel said. "Approval rates are up 31 points. They're running 3 points above the district average for the first time in 4 years. Hilton drank his coffee, looking out at the city. Somewhere 14 minutes east, the neighborhood he grew up in was finally being seen. It wasn't a headline. It was just a number on a report, moving in the right direction, because someone had finally been made to look at it. Numbers moved quietly, when you gave them the right conditions. The Meridian branch looked different now. Brenda Thomas had been promoted to branch compliance officer, a position created by the federal consent order. She no longer reported to a manager. She reported directly to the corporate office. On her first day, Brenda walked through the main entrance. She sat at her new desk, which had the same sightline to the lobby she'd had for 11 years. She opened her phone and started a new file. The old one, 48 entries of arrogance, was now a public federal record. Teresa was still there too, still smiling, still paying attention to people in a way that no training manual could ever teach. But the real legacy wasn't in one branch. It was in the legal precedent. Hilton's attorney, Nathaniel Williams, had used the Meridian case to open 3 more lawsuits against predatory banks. One had already settled. The story had changed the calculus of power. Across the region, complaints from black applicants weren't just being filed, they were being heard. People finally believed that accountability was possible. The bank's chairwoman, Florence Fanning, had launched a new Equitable Access initiative. 3 other banks had already asked to adopt it. The Christopher Zepedas of the world were being hunted out of the system by the very institutions that used to protect them. Hilton Burke's name was mentioned in the announcement. He hadn't wanted the credit, but Florence insisted. She believed that accurate records required names. Hilton finished his coffee and set the French press aside. He looked at his city, the city he had chosen, and the city that was finally learning to choose him back. The record was set. The balance was restored. Hilton turned from the window. He had work to do. Christopher Zepeda told Hilton Burke to find a bank that actually trusts him. He set it inside a building where Hilton Burke held 34.2% of the shares. Today, that branch is running 3 points above the district average. 41 families received $3.4 million in settlements, and Christopher Zepeda will never work in banking again. But here's my question for you. Was $3.4 million enough? Drop your verdict in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe, because Hilton Burke's story is not the only one sitting in a compliance file, waiting for the right person to look at it. There are more, and every single one of them matters.